Hello, this is Matzi and welcome to part 3 of my tutorial on building modular structures in Smile Game Builder. Just a quick note, at the end of this video I will talk a little bit about the assets that I use to build this and how you might get a chance to download them in the near future, which is something I will be making available after I finish the tutorial series. Now let's get into part 3, which is finishing the second floor and then adding events. This actually is a little bit more complicated than I originally thought it was going to be. And that has to do with the way the second level objects interact with the floor. In fact, you can see in these objects I have on the right, I did make some objects that float above the first level, which I had intended to be something I could then just drag on to the second level for usage. But you can see here that they don't always show up on that level because these flooring pieces are set up in a way that lets objects get placed on top. You may also see that occasionally it does fit fine because some of these floor pieces have different settings. So basically what I discovered was it wasn't easy to just take one type of object and use it for a first level or a second level. You have to actually place these based upon what type of flooring you're placing them on top of. What I ended up discovering was I really wanted to just keep using brick wall level 1. And I'll show you here, I can actually just add this to the flooring and it appears on top. Now, just as my demo earlier, if I drag this around, you'll see occasionally it disappears. That's because some of these flooring pieces are configured differently. And so when it disappears, it's showing up on the first floor rather than the second floor. There's another problem introduced by putting this object on the second floor, because even though it's appearing on the second floor, it actually interacts with the player as if it were still on the first floor. So the elevation settings of this object actually block the player from walking through it. And I think it's important to just show that so you understand. So you'd think I'd be able to walk through this door and continue walking forward, but I'm pushing the forward button and nothing's happening. I have to actually walk around this invisible block that the player is not able to walk through, and that's because the object on the second floor is what's interacting with the player. Then when I go up to that object, you can see it's looking just fine there, but it also interacts with the player on this level. So overall, a little bit weird behavior, and it essentially limits my ability to put objects on the second floor without causing some kind of conflict with player movement. To get around the limitation of objects and placement, I can actually do a simple trick, which is convert this to an event or an advance event. Once it's an event, it gets treated almost like a player object, and so the collision is determined by whether this checkbox over here is checked, which should be if this is a wall, and then the player should be able to walk underneath just fine. So using this wall as the example, I'll go do another test, and I should be able to walk just fine through the space I couldn't walk through before. And as before, I should be properly blocked from walking through this wall on the second floor. So now we know the solution to getting these objects working, and this is where it gets a little annoying as you build out the house. It's great that this can be an advanced event, but now I can't just click and add pieces. Now I have to do copy paste, or every time I add a new object, I'm going to have to convert it to an advanced event. It's not terrible, but it is a little bit more work than just clicking with the mouse. And if you forget to do it, it might produce some weird interactions with the player. This rule applies for all the objects up here on the second floor. And rather than have you watch me do the tedious work, I'm going to skip right ahead to this already being built out. This is a match of what I have on the left-hand side, which I built prior to the tutorial series even starting. What you don't see here, but I happen to know because I've done this before, is underneath this chest is a bookshelf. And underneath the wall, take my word for it, which is up here, is another bookshelf. This is where we start talking about how we get events to work on both levels. Conceivably, if you only have things on the second level, you don't need to worry about doing anything fancy. You should be able to just say, this event has an object, and when the player interacts, something happens. But for everything that's on the first floor, I need to do a bit of a workaround, and that's because I can't really have events on the first floor that are advanced or otherwise, or they'll pop up to the second floor, generally speaking. So there are two elements that have to be set up to make this work. First, we have to know at any given time what the player height is. Player height is what the player's elevation happens to be. So if they're on the first level, which is just ground level, that's 1. Or if they're up on this second level, it's actually 3, because it goes by the cube of where the player's feet are. So here's 1, but if it were on the second floor, it would actually be height of 3. Now we'll take a look at the common event I created to make this work. So in common events, ignore the other ones, I have this player stats option. I call it player stats with the idea that maybe there are other things I'd want to track about the player, like their XY coordinate or otherwise. In this case, all I do is assign the player height to the variable player height. And this is synchronized and repeated, so it's always checking the player's height wherever they are and recording it in this variable. Then we go to the specific event. As before, I am going to cheat and take something I already know works and move it over. I'll start with the event that only has one thing. We'll pull this over here and take a look at what it does. So all I do is do a check when the player talks to this object and see if the player's height equals 1. And if it does, I give a message. I could do anything I wanted to. In this case, I'm just giving a message. I do have to make sure that I check this box that says ignore elevation. That means at whatever height this event is on, if the player faces that event and does the talk button, they will interact with it and cause it to do this check. And I'll show that in the demo. This is pretty simple. I'm only on level 1 here. I don't have to worry about interacting with 2 objects at once. But this is why I have the chest as another example. Let me put this up here. Oh, it's going to give me that difficulty again, isn't it? So this is one of the annoyances of working with this. Getting this placed is a little harder than just clicking and dragging from wherever you are. But we got it there. This event is a little more advanced. So now I have 2 things I want to interact with. I want to interact with the chest and with the bookshelf underneath. Thankfully, the checks are equally as easy. I just add another check, make sure the height is equal to 3, and I give it a different message based upon that height setting. In theory, if there was an elegant way to do a 3rd and a 4th level, this would work just the same. I'm a bit skeptical that getting farther beyond level 2 would actually work with this setup, but I will do some experimenting, and if I come up with a solution, I'm happy to do a post or tutorial on how that works. So we have these events, and to go full circle on the original video, let's take a look through the house and confirm that these events actually work as we expect them and that the upper level works as we expect it to. Here we are with our house that we just built. Everything should look pretty much like the demo did. And I have 2 bookshelves here that should have events. So talk to this one, it says, these are my books are amazing. And this one, same message. So I could have every one of these events wired up. For tutorial purpose, not really needed. There's my kitchen, still a kitchen. We'll go up to the second floor. Now, This wall is where I put that event. I just want to show I'm trying to talk to this wall right now. Nothing's happening. That's exactly the behavior I expect. Here are my objects up on the second floor, and I cannot walk through them, which again is what we should be expecting. And then here's our chest. So on the first floor, it said, these are my books. My books are amazing. I'm on the second floor. Now this should have a message associated with the chest. You get nothing. Good day, sir. So this could be used in many different ways when setting up the second floor and the first floor. Overall, a little annoying and complicated, but not so complicated that it can't be worked with. This wraps up the end of part 3 of my tutorial. It also wraps up the whole theme of the project. I do have an additional part, which is more to do with looking at some of the intricate little problems. That is kind of a workshop. It's to show some of the things I learned while I was trying to get these objects together. It's not really thematic to getting the building built, but it does provide some information that is useful. While I plan to release these assets, it's important to know that I don't really plan at the moment to do any additional assets that are similar in scale to these ones. These follow a scale of 48 by 48 by 48 voxels, which is pretty significant in the world of creating voxel objects. And it also took me a lot more time to build them. I've actually changed my format to a smaller grid size for voxels to 16 by 16 by 16, and that means they look a little bit less detailed than these objects do. But I'm happy to release them for those who want to try them out. I'm also probably going to do some tutorials on how I build assets with Cubicle and then get them into SGB. Of course, I will focus on the current format I'm doing right now, but in the future, I could also look at different resolutions of voxels based on any requests people might have. Check out the description below where you can find both links to Companion Wulf's videos and website, as well as my own website, monty.com, where you can follow along with the projects I'm working on. Stay tuned for part 4 of this tutorial series, and I will see you next time.